Thank you, Chair. I move the bill be read a second time.
You have 20 minutes.
And sharing with my colleagues. Chair, as everybody in this chamber knows, rents are completely out of control. A quick look on daft.ie this morning confirms this. In Cork City, the cost of renting a standard two-bedroom home is now €16,000 per year. In Lucan, my own constituency, the price is now an astonishing €24,000. Across the electoral boundary in the Taoiseach's own constituency in Castleknock, the price for an average family home with two beds is €25,000 a year, and indeed in parts of the Minister's own constituency, rents can be as high as €34,000 annually. Now, this is absolutely insane. How is any modest or average income working person or couple meant to afford this? Average rents in Dublin are now €17,000 per month, and across the state the average is €14,000. In many cases, you would need an income of between €80,000 and €100,000 per household to be able to afford these kinds of prices. And the impact of astronomical rents are everywhere to be seen. Renters living under huge financial pressure. First-time buyers forced to move home with their parents to save for a deposit. Local economies starved of spending as workers pay 40 to 50% of their disposable income on rent, while small and medium-sized employers struggling with rising wage claims driven in the main by high housing costs. The crisis in the rental sector is hurting people and damaging our economy. But it wasn't meant to be this way. Simon Coveney, when he was Minister for Housing, launched his strategy for the private rental sector in December 2016. And he promised to, and I quote, moderate the rate of rent increase. He said that after 3 years, and I quote again, new supply will have come on stream and pressures will have eased. He and his successor Owen Murphy have failed. And why? Because Fine Gael has left it to the private sector to increase rental supply. Because Fine Gael has failed to deliver a single cost rental home in 3 years. Because Fine Gael is relying on the private rental sector to meet social housing need, increasing demand and rents for all. And crucially, because the rent pressure zones are not working. Fine Gael said rent pressure zones would limit rent increases to 4% a year for 3 years. Yet since January 2017, rents in Dublin have increased 23%, across the state 24%. That's double what the government promised. No doubt the Minister will claim that finally there is some evidence that rent inflation moderation is taking place, and even if that is true, and it's not clear yet, it is far too late. This policy has failed, and any future rent increases for hard-pressed renters is completely unacceptable. It is time, Chair, to give renters a break. The bill before us, co-sponsored by my new constituency colleague, Deputy Mark Ward, does just that. It seeks to put a month's rent back in every renter's pocket through a refundable tax credit, and to stop rents from further increasing. Now, Fine Gael have given tax breaks to just about everybody else in the housing system. First-time buyers got the Help to Buy scheme, landlords got increases in mortgage interest relief, and vulture funds even more generous tax breaks. So, Minister, what about renters? Do they not deserve the same support? A refundable tax credit, as outlined by ourselves, would put up to €1,500 a year back into the pocket of every renter. It would cost the Exchequer €260 million a year, but in our view, that would be money well spent. And meanwhile, rents would be frozen for 3 years at their current level for existing tenancies, and frozen at the RTB rent index level for that size and location of property for all new tenancies. Now, let's be very clear. This is an emergency measure. It is intended to ease the pressure on renters and to give government some time to address the issue of supply. The private sector cannot and will not deliver affordable rental accommodation, particularly in our large cities. That can only be done with public housing on public land. In 2014, the Fine Gael government promised to invest in affordable cost rental accommodation. In 2016, Rebuilding Ireland made the same commitment. And only this year, the first pilot cost rental scheme went on site, just 50 units to be delivered next year. 50 affordable rental units throughout the course of Rebuilding Ireland. In Sinn Féin's alternative budget for 2019 and again for 2020, we proposed a major investment in council-led affordable rental accommodation. We committed €395 million to deliver over 1,700 cost rental units in a single year, and this is in addition to a commitment to deliver over 4,000 affordable purchase homes in the same period. That's the scale of ambition that is required, and anything short of that will condemn renters to a decade of unaffordable rents. Of course, government will claim that the bill is actually bad for renters, that it will deter investment and choke off supply. I have to say that's absolute nonsense. When you combine Fine Gael's generous tax breaks for institutional investors with record high rental yields, even with a rent freeze, investing in rental accommodation is a pretty sure bet. This is just cover for Fine Gael doing what they always do, looking after the big investors and big landlords while letting the working man and woman fend for themselves. Now, Chair, I understand some opposition parties have concerns with the bill, and I want to give a commitment to every TD in the opposition that we will work constructively with all parties to iron out any of those potential difficulties and approve this bill if necessary. In fact, in my view, with the right approach, there is no reason why this legislation could not pass before the end of the year. So, Chair, let's roll up our sleeves. Let's work together and let's give renters the early Christmas present they rightly deserve. A refundable tax credit that will put a month's rent back in their pockets, an emergency rent freeze for 3 years, and real investment in affordable cost rental accommodation to ensure that workers and families can access the secure and affordable accommodation they so desperately need and rightly deserve.